Hello world, this is Lisa Friedrichsen, your professor from Johnson County Community College. And in this short screencast, we're going to discuss the files that you'll be working with in Chapter 2. The two files are called digital and estimate. And if we look at them in a browser, here's digital. Your JavaScript will create these numbers that go into this table. The other part of the exercise is a little more exciting. We work on this estimate web page and watch our total estimate number up in the upper left-hand corner as we add photographers or add the number of hours that we want the photographers to work on our shoot, as we interact with these checkboxes and add a memory book or rights for all photos, then we see our total estimate changing. So our JavaScript is doing some math that is interacting with this element behind the scenes to recalculate that total estimate as I interact with these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different controls on the web page. Okay, so let's look at the digital page first. Our digital page includes a bunch of JavaScript in the middle of the page, and we know that this is not a good idea because embedded JavaScript is very similar to inline styles. They're hard to maintain and very difficult to reuse on other pages should we want to. So this is not a good idea, but we still do it in this case just because we're still learning and it's more convenient to put our JavaScript directly in the web page than to use an external file. The first script section simply declares several variables. The variable names happen to be the metric prefixes for the numbers they represent. Kilo means 1,000, or deci, like decimeter, means 0.1. Centa is 1/100th. Mega, the number there is 1 times 10 to the 6th power. So 10 to the 6th power would be the number 1 with 6 zeros, and that's a million. And we know a megabyte is 1,000,000 bytes. That's what these numbers represent. It's scientific notation for 1 times 10, and in this case to the 18th power. And they're just declaring a variable with that same metric name to represent that number. Down in the body of the web page, we've got a little table with 2 cells in each row. And here's our heading, the prefix and the decimal equivalent. And here is our first column with those same metric prefix names, only capitalized. And in the second cell of the row, we're simply using the document.write JavaScript to write the variable name that corresponds with that prefix that we've declared previously in our script tags. So we did something very similar to this in Chapter 1 using the document.write JavaScript statement. So we just get a little bit more practice with that document object and its write method and using variable names within our write method to create the results of this table. The estimate page, in my opinion, is a little bit more exciting because it interacts with the user when they click 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different controls. And I keep calling these things that you interact with on a form controls because that's what they're commonly called in other programming languages. But we know in HTML, we create each of these items with the input element. The value of the type attribute determines what that input element looks like. If the type is number and has min and max attribute values, then the spinner control will start and stop at the minimum and maximum numbers. If the type value is checkbox, then we get something that looks like this. Every browser displays these elements a little bit differently, but checkbox is very nice for a yes/no question. It would be good for you to review this code in your HTML in the form open and form end tags. This form isn't being used to submit data anywhere, so we do not see a submit button. We do not see an input type equals submit. And we also are using field set tags to organize the controls for the photography and for the travel section. So if we were to look at our CSS file, I'm sure we would see a background color on the field set selector to get this nice light tan background. The JavaScript that is used to interact with this form is all stored in an external ft.js file, which is the way to go. And it's being loaded right before the closing body tag. And that's the appropriate place to load this JavaScript because after all, we don't need it until after the page loads, when the user can see the entire page and then start interacting with the page to see their total estimate change. Let's look and see what the total estimate element is. If we were to find that total estimate in our HTML, we would find it inside this aside, which is located right before the footer. I want you to pay attention to the ID on this area. So we've got a span here, meaning that we've got an inline element with an ID of estimate, and it's right after this text total estimate, which is positioned right here on our web page, because if we were to look at the CSS, we would find that the aside element is floated left and the article element is floated right. And all of this, including the form, is in the article element in the web page. So we could learn quite a bit by going through the style sheet as well. Of particular interest to me was that he started with a universal selector and then put in some reset rules to tidy up his margins, padding, and border to make them the same for all browsers. The important thing to note from that is that the numbers are going to appear right here inside the span with an ID of estimate. So our JavaScript is going to talk to this little span, this ID, quite a bit, because obviously that number changes every time we interact with the input boxes on the web page.